I think we're live. I hope so. And once again, I'm confounded by the mysteries of modern technology. Hey, everybody. I hope you're with me. And I think it's 8 o'clock. That's what it says on my watch, anyway. So, welcome and thanks for joining me. This is our second office hours. Uh, Hi there. Hi, Jen. Oh, this is so great. I'm probably going to have to use my glasses though. And Kelsing, oh my gosh, and Chris Fielding and hi everybody. Hi. We had about 500 people on and off during last month's call, and we've gotten some terrific questions. Just a joy. So thank you very much for, let me get rid of this off the top of my screen. There we go. Hi. So Foxy says hello, and she would be up here except that she's recovering from cruciate ligament surgery, and so she can't make the stairs, and she's a little overweight, so it's hard for me to carry her right now. Anyway, she sends you her love, and she's thrilled to pieces that people are asking about power animals. Hey there, Autumn. Hi, Autumn. Hi, Cara. Hi. Hi, Chris again. Hi, Joanne. I could do this all night. Hi from Holland. Hello, and from Vancouver, BC. Fantastic. Are you all, somebody tell me, are you able to see who else is on the call? Like you're all looking at the names coming up? Hey, Patricia. Oh my gosh. All my favorite people are here. How wonderful. If I hit that, does that mean waving or you're waving? Autumn's from Texas. Hey, Patricia. Mwah, hugs and kisses. Hello, everybody. Oh, Twyla from Chicago. Natalie. Hello, Natalie. And Vanessa. This is wonderful. Thank you, Twyla. Thank you for your great work. Twyla has been heading up the Greater Chicago Pagan Pride for years now, doing amazing, amazing work. Hello, Wendy. Hi. And Joanne Beatty. Hello. Only if they comment. I see. Okay. Hi, Jen from Fort Lauderdale. Oh, you're so lucky. Nice and warm down there, huh? Robin Michael. Hi, Robin. Hi. Hello, everybody. Okay, well, shall I get started? I think I should. So I'm going to show you an image before we plunge into questions. Check this out, everybody. Okay, is that not spectacular? Really beautiful. Hi, Ellen. This is called the Cold Moon, and it's from the Green Wheel Oracle, which is an oracle deck that was created by my working partner in the creation of the Witch's Wisdom Tarot, which will be out in approximately a little less than a year. And she's a remarkable artist. And I wanted to draw, hi, Carolyn. I wanted to draw a card to start in a kind of prayerful way. And so lo and behold, I pulled the Cold Moon, which happens to be the card that corresponds with exactly this time of year between November and December. And it says, I'll put my glasses on, the Cold Moon is perhaps the most uplifting card of all. How's that? Pretty good, right? The darkest time of year deserves the most uplifting card of all. It speaks of healing, nurturing, and immense love, of hearts overflowing with compassion, and of beauty in the darkest moments. The threads that go with this, because she has this idea of weaving, which we've found working throughout this entire deck that we've been creating using journeying, of unconditional love, healing, holding the heart through winter. And this is the dream time. So I hope that you are all dreaming well. We know after many years that all new life begins first with a dream. So when the sun returns in a few weeks, in about a month, yeah, exactly, 1 month, will be the winter solstice, and it's the shortest day, the longest night, and it's the moment also when the sun returns. Hi, Suzanne! Wonderful! Hi, Sarah! Yes, Danielle's art is wonderful. Her name is Danielle Barlow, and you will find her online. It's been amazing, a completely amazing experience. We have done, between the two of us, about 200 journeys. We've journeyed for every single card, in the majors and the minors. We have had the most extraordinary experiences, often seeing the same things or having journeys that we couldn't understand until we put the two pieces together. Sometimes she held the key to mine and I held the key to hers. We decided on what the image was, once we had figured out the meaning. And then her job was to draw and then paint, and with my input, and mine was to write with her input, and it's been extraordinary. So I'm going to start showing you guys some more of those in coming months. Cora, yeah, snow. Paula, I don't know. I can live without snow a little longer. Okay, so I'm going to get started with some of these fabulous questions. And one of the first ones was, how do we connect to our power animals? And what's the difference between a power animal and a spirit animal? Okay, so I think the term spirit animal became very popular with this wonderful children's book, The Golden Compass, yes, in which they referred to spirit animals. But essentially, a power animal is the term that I was first introduced to 40 years ago when I started practicing shamanically with core shamanism. And it is I think personally that a power animal and a spirit animal are in effect the same thing. They are your guide. They're your teacher. They are your protector. They are your advisor. And I think we are all born with a power animal, in fact. And most people, there we go. I channeled my own deck of oracle cards with messages from real cats. Fantastic. It was an amazing experience. Yes, this is to do this work is amazing. And since we're talking about power animals, well timed. So when you enter non-ordinary reality, you need a guide. They speak the language. They understand the territory. They understand the rules of the world in which they reside and which you are visiting. And they truly are your guide and your teacher. They know everything that you need to know. And so they make the experience safe and empowering and transformative, a true blessing experience. And I think that it's made an enormous difference in my life to know that I had not just one, but several power animals over the years. Additional animals that were appropriate to my life at the time appeared and worked with me, and I still have powerful relationships with them. And they are your guardians and your guides through realms of spirit, hence spirit animal. That you also have allies, which can be insects and plant spirits and other beings, even mythological creatures that can attend to you and guide you and help you. The spirits of ancestors as well. But the power animal, the term that I use, you can certainly use spirit animal, is to me, first and foremost, the wise one who is with you and who shows you what you need. So you can enter realms of spirit and never worry. Yeah? You can go and never be concerned. You can be at peace and you can be secure. You can be confident in yourself and in what you're experiencing because they are there with you. And whatever happens, they are there with you. And so you are always safe and you are always loved and you are always in the presence of compassionate, caring guides. So the other part of this question was, how do you connect to your power animal? So like I said, I mean, I think that all of us have a guide, a companion that has been with us from the moment of birth. And you most often see it when people have these fabulous collections, right? You walk into somebody's home and they have 4 million owls and people are always giving them owls, right? And so you know immediately that is the protective power animal, the spirit guide that's been with them. Once you recognize that, you can begin to have a more active and engaged relationship. What does that mean? You go online, you read, you get books out of the library, you go outside. For example, if your animal is owl, and one of my animals is owl. And so I go out at night, especially in the wintertime, because that is when they seem to be at least in my new home, when I'm most likely to hear them, and not necessarily see them, but feel them in flight. I had a little owl that would show up every once in a while, about a little barn owl about this big, and he would show up in the apple tree right outside the back door of my previous home. So you begin to pay attention. You learn about their natural habitats, about what they eat, what they like, how they live. You begin to learn about them, and as a result, you start to learn about yourself. So connecting with them is a way of connecting with essential parts of yourself. My first power animal was a bear, and it came to me at a time when I was not in possession or aware of my power. And so he, she, they came to me when I most needed the protection of Great Mother Bear. And it was an extraordinary experience. And a bear is still with me to this day. So one way to connect with your animal is to pay attention to animals with which you've had a relationship and have had an affinity over the years. The other way, which I described at great length in Awaken the Witch Within, right? We had a whole section on shamanism, including journeying, and in Wicca Made Easy, there's an entire chapter devoted to shamanism and how to journey. I like to work with drumming, and we provided I drummed for a good 20-25 minutes, and that's available as an audio tape, so you can work with it. And the very first journey that you do is to get a power animal so that it is with you and there to guide you in all future journeys. So the very first thing you do is enter the tunnel, you come out of the tunnel into non-ordinary reality, and you call your power animal to be with you. And the way that you know it's your power animal is that it presents itself to you in a very insistent manner. Traditionally, we used to say it would present itself 4 times, and so you knew. But it can present itself to you once and just be simply insistent that it is indeed your power animal. And you'll know. You then play with it, you spend time with it, and it will begin to teach you the things you need to know. You can embrace it and literally feel it move into your body. And similarly, you'll feel yourself moving in to its body, and you'll spend time together, and it'll begin to take you through non-ordinary reality. When you come back through the tunnel, it remains in realms of spirit, but in fact, it's always with you, and you'll begin to see the presence of your power animal in your life. It'll appear through synchronicities and coincidences of all sorts. And it's up to you then to begin to cultivate your relationship with your power animal in this world, by learning about it, by reading about it, by having an image of it. I'm not going to move the camera around, but I've got bears everywhere, all over, and some very remarkable examples with me. And when I am in areas where I know that there will be bears, like the Canadian Rockies, where I spent a month, I called to bear before I went, and I called to bear when I was there, and bear showed up on the front porch of the little tiny cabin that I was in, and in the woods nearby. And when I was taking walks, there were bears presenting themselves, so much so that I had to thank them and say, thank you. That's enough. I don't want you to imperil yourself by coming to be in contact with me. Actually, I realize that as I'm speaking to you, I'm wearing my bear necklace because I was journeying earlier. It's a Sami bear necklace. So I would say that journeying is one of the best methods. But of course, you can contact a power animal through your dreams if it comes to you in dreams. You can contact a power animal through this insistent sense of a fascination or a passion or an interest in an animal. Generally speaking, power animals are not domestic animals, but that there are always exceptions to the rule. So instead of a domesticated dog, it would be a wolf or a coyote. But people have horses with whom they have very intimate and personal relationships, who are their best friends and their beloved companions in this world, literally, and who are also their power animals in the other world. So I don't want to, constrain your experiences and the possibilities for you by creating hard and fast rules, because we know that rules are created to be broken. But by and large, power animals tend to be wild animals. Let's see. Only consistent animal, dragonfly. Yes. Now a traditional approach to core shamanism has been that essentially one avoids contact with insects or reptiles as a general rule of thumb. But in fact, again, that's a perfect example of exceptions. Ladybugs, butterflies, dragonflies. Um, for me, the scarab has been one of the most powerful allies, spirit allies that I've had for a very long time. Um, uh, so the idea of staying away from insects, yes, I mean, there's a tradition of insects being connected with the diagnosis of illnesses, that when one looks to see and to diagnose an illness, one may see a lot of insects or bugs. But in fact, bugs are part of Mother Nature's recycling teams, right? So you can see how they would be an indication of a malady or an illness, that they're attempting to clean it out. But there are all sorts of insects that are guides and allies, and can for some people be a power animal. Bees are another example, right? We wouldn't be able to live without them. And so that's an example. And for many women, poisonous snakes, no, but snakes can be power animals, and turtles and frogs. And so there are also exceptions to the general rule of avoiding contact with reptiles. Generally speaking, you can make the distinction by whether or not they're friendly or whether they're hostile. Do they bare their teeth? Do they behave in a manner that's hostile or aggressive? In that case, you know that that is not an ally or a guide, right? Okay. Hi, Anna. Hello. Hi. Mwah. Kisses from Italy. Oh, la buona Italia. I miss you all. Mwah. Okay. So I hope that's helpful. I would say that if you are looking to connect with a power animal, use the drumming tape that is the drumming recording, the audio that's available through Awaken the Witch Within, which, by the way, is once again available through Hay House. If you go to their website, you'll find it. And whenever you sign up for it, it's yours forever, and you can use it at your own pace. And there's a whole long section on journeying, on working with a power animal. And like I said, there's an audio tape of drumming. And we'll also see what we can do to make that available elsewhere. And in Wicca Made Easy, there's an entire chapter on shamanic work and working with power animals. Okay, so I could talk about this forever, but I can't because there are too many other wonderful questions. So I'm going to move on. All right. How do we free ourselves from past life memories? This is also, I mean, all of these questions are really interesting, and I just want to thank everybody who sent them in because they're really thoughtful. So freeing yourself from past life memories is really fascinating. I think it's less a question of freeing yourself from the memory than freeing yourself from the limitations of past lives and the energy imprints that they leave on us. And in that sense, I think it's very much like doing shadow work. The first thing that you need to do is determine whether or not the patterns in this life that are predominating, whether it's through relationships or the way in which you conduct yourself, or the limitations that you find imposing on yourself, are connected to past life. I have a tendency to be very monastic. I can stay indoors for weeks on end, if not months on end. I mean, I love being out in nature, but I can go to the opposite end. And I personally think it's because in a past life, from experiences that I've had in journeying to look at past lives, I spent a long period of time in another lifetime incarcerated in a tiny little cell. And so I learned how to become very still and to be able to go into altered states as a result. And to be very calm and very centered and very at one and very peaceful, in fact, when I'm alone and with myself. And I think it contributes to my ability to go into an altered state. And so I think that's part of the key to the answer to your question of freeing yourself from past life memories. The first is to go back, either through dreams or through guided visualization or through journeying, to have the past life experience. You can work with somebody else, but I have a preference for doing that work ourselves, that you should do it for yourself. And there are many ways you can do that. You can also do it with tarot cards. You can do a past life reading for yourself. And as you begin to have a vision of that past life, it's more advanced work for me shamanically. But one of the things that I've done over the years is to go back to the moment of my death in past lives that I have experienced and bring my spirit forward into this life. And it's very releasing. So the energies and the blockages from previous lives then are released. The positive energies are released and the negative ones seem to dissipate. And it's a fascinating way of moving the current of life forward. But I think that the key to freeing yourself from past life memories that are inhibitions or have negative energies or negative limitations for you is to see the gift. And it's the same kind of work that we do, as I said, when we're doing shadow work. It's the gold in the dark. That's the phrase that Jungians use. It's the phrase that I use. What is the gift of the shadow? So, for example, if you have a tendency to isolate and spend time alone, well, what is the gift of that? Well, I've cultivated a lot of skills like writing, like altered state work, like being very calm and very centered and extremely present, of not being dependent upon feedback from other people or dependent upon other relationships for a feeling of self-worth, of being present with myself. I'm able to be rather than to constantly do. So that would be one of the suggestions that I would make to free oneself from a past life memory, is to go back, experience the memory, and see what is the gift, right? So, for example, if a past life involved a violent or destructive relationship with someone else, so what is the lesson of that? What is the wisdom? It teaches us to be mindful of the relationships that you're in this life, right? And to look at the relationships you're in and to see whether there's a repetition of the pattern. And if there is, then you begin to look at, is it healthy? Is it good for me? Does it nourish me? Does it make me happy? If it doesn't, then you don't repeat it in this life, right? So it brings you into awareness of how you're taking care of yourself now, of what you're doing now. Are you repeating the pattern, or are you going to free yourself from it? The way you free yourself from the past life is by not repeating it in this life, right? The other way is to look at the blessing of it. Like I said, what are the positive things that you can take from a negative experience? A terrible situation can in fact make you more compassionate. It can make you stronger. It can make you more generous. If you look at the negative and you consider what its opposite quality is, then you cultivate that, right? And very often we see that with people, that they've been through something very negative, and the consequence is in fact that after they've gone through it, they in fact become very focused on its opposite, on the positive quality that is the antidote. And I think that's how we free ourselves from past life memories. We learn the lesson, we take the blessing out of it, we extract the positive that was in the negative. It makes us mindful of how we're living in this world, and then we can begin to take the right actions in order to live a life in this lifetime that's positive, rewarding, affirming, healthy, nourishing, and generous with ourselves. So, okay, what is the relationship between shifting our consciousness and performing magic? I love this chicken and egg, right? Does magic help shift our consciousness? Yes. It's kind of like chicken and egg. It kind of reminds me also of the question when people would say to me, yeah, well, is a goddess or a god, is that an archetype? Is that a psychological construct? Or is it an objective being? Is it outside of ourselves? And the answer is yes. We're used to thinking dualistically, right? Chicken or egg, as opposed to chicken and egg, right? So shifting our consciousness helps us to create magic, and magic helps to shift our consciousness. It works both ways, right? So I'll give you an example, right? In Wicca Made Easy, I talk about meditation, and that one of the things that witches do that I find remarkable is that we meditate, right? So we will chant, we will use breathing, we will use many of the techniques that you find in Buddhism and in yoga and other traditions to meditate, to alter consciousness, to go essentially into alpha. But we add another layer to that, which is the focusing, right, through like meditation that uses chanting, but the chanting, right, which assists in altering consciousness, can be focused for a specific goal or accomplishment. And, we don't want to be all type A witches where we have this defined goal and we're always working to achieve or accomplish something. Sometimes all we want to accomplish is an altered state of consciousness in which we are able to open out our mode of perception so that we are experiencing the innate divinity, the sacredness of the world that we normally don't see because we're in beta consciousness. We're in survival mode. We're in pick up the kids and cross the street without getting hit by a car and pick up the groceries and pay the bills, right? We're mostly in beta consciousness. And so as soon as we go into an altered state of consciousness through meditation or chanting or ecstatic practices like dancing or the use of drumming, which takes you into theta, which is a deeper altered state of consciousness, we are already engaging in a kind of magic, because we're the most important, the greatest, the most profound magic is this communion that we experience with the divine in spirit realms and in this world. And an altered state of consciousness helps us to see that. It helps us to experience that communion. It takes the blindfold off. It takes off the blindfold of beta and opens you to the divinity that is all around and within us, but which we're normally not aware of. And for me, the greatest magic comes when our hearts open, when our minds open, and when we're able to experience the divinity of the world in which we live. Yes, in spirit realms, but very much in this one, and in ourselves and in one another. And magic to me is the flow of that energy into us and then through us into the world. We shape it, we craft it. That's spell crafting, that's spell working, that's magic when we give that energy shape and form and we pour it from ourselves into the world. So chicken and egg? Yes. Either or? No. Both and. So altering consciousness enables us to make magic. You alter consciousness through breath, through chanting, through all sorts of methods, through journeying, etc. And then you can focus your intent, your altered consciousness through chanting, through ritual, through magical work on a specific goal. And the goal could be no more than being in communion with the divine, or in a very specific task like healing or prosperity or love or whatever it is that one needs to bring into one's life, right? Or to create in the world through, your unique gifts, the reason that you're here. And we craft that energy and make magic with it by bringing that energy into the world as an offering. So I think they work together. So magic alters our consciousness, and altering our consciousness helps us to make magic. Just a great question. I hope that was a good answer for you. Here's another great question. They're all great. Struggling to move forward as one gets started. Where to begin? What is a good first step? Well, here you are. So, here's a great first step. You're in community. You're actually in circle. Here at the time of the cold moon, you're taking first steps just by being present here. And we've altered consciousness, and we're making magic. We're making the magic of being in the presence of the sacred, being in the presence of one another. And okay, but let's be practical. That's always helpful. So personally, the reason that I did Awaken the Witch Within was to provide not just one first step, but a second and a third and a fourth and a fifth, to create a structured program that people could follow in order to begin to experience the divine within themselves, in the world around them, to begin to understand what real magic is, to begin to make magic, and to begin to practice this as the really gorgeous spirituality that it is. So personally, I would recommend Awaken the Witch Within, because it gives you a structured program. I'm there with you teaching. There are PDFs and programs, and it's step by step. It's the why-to, which is always incredibly important to me. All my books that are practical how-to books are also why-to books. It explains why. And I would say one small practice. I believe in micro practices, very small things, and a daily practice. So you could, for example, it could be the same practice every day, which has tremendous cumulative power as you do it, or you could do a different practice every day. One of my daily practices is to make an offering, and I do it in the context of a very simple circle. I go outside, no matter what the weather is, bird seed. I greet each of the four directions in the simplest way, in the absolutely simplest way. I begin by rattling with the bird seed, and all the birds know. They hear it, and they're already coming. And now we have turkeys, they start to come. They know, that mom is coming out to feed them. It's my offering to them. I take care of them, and I love them, and I nourish them every day. So I go outside, I rattle the seed container. I stand by the bird feeders. That's where I do the circle. And I stand and I address the east. I may do it out loud. Sometimes I do it silently, but I do it. I greet the rising sun and the powers of air, and I thank them for the breath of life. And I ask for my mind to be clear, or I ask for eloquence or the ability to write well. Then I face the south. I thank the power of the sun, and I ask for energy to be courageous as I go forth in the day. Then I face the west. And I always honor my parents who've passed over, and I think of my grandparents, and I ask for my heart to be open to the love that's offered to me every day, and to be mindful, to be grateful, and to give that love back in whatever form it comes to me, to acknowledge it and to reciprocate. And then I face the north, which happens to be where my house is, and I look up towards my office, which is where I'm sitting right now, and I ask to work well, that I should be able to work well today, and do something of value that will be of meaning, and that will provide sustenance for myself and soul nourishment for others. Then I turn back to the east, and I fill the bird seeders, and I scatter the seed on the ground, and I come inside. I do that every single morning, and it's incredibly empowering. It's utterly simple, and it clears me out. It focuses me. It sets my energies for the day in each of the four elements in the four directions. It centers me, the sun above, the earth below. I know where I am. I know what I'm going to do. I'm filled with gratitude for all the blessings I have. That to me is the perfect first step every day. And you don't have to go outside to do it, and you don't have to do an entire circle. Although I think it's a wonderful first step, and connects you to who you are and where you are and why you're here. I would say another wonderful first step: go awaken the witch within. If you're taking the course, make sure you go to the Facebook group and join us, and check in. If not every day, check in frequently. People are sharing, they're putting up their altars, all kinds of wonderful things. Another first step would be an altar, to create an altar for yourself, a seasonal altar. Right now we are in the dream time. So an altar that is devoted to the dreams: purple candles, pine cones, greens from outside, ivy and evergreens, expressions of the dream that you want to bring to fruition, writing, drawing, whatever your creativity is. This is a wonderful time. Or nothing, a single candle, right? Because it is the dark time for you to dream. A journal is also a wonderful first step. To start with that, and to pay attention to the signs and synchronicities that are appearing in your life, and to write those down. Great first step. Another great look at them all, I don't want to overwhelm you. Another great first step is divination. I was practicing divination really before I became a witch. A tarot reading was in fact the reason that I became a witch, but I had been using I Ching and some other methods before that, and it was an extraordinary experience for me, because for me, divination is not just about foreseeing the future. It's about having a dialogue with the divine. That as you begin to practice divination by whatever method you like. And it can be as simple as taking a book. I describe it in, I think, witchcrafting, and also in, I might describe it in Book of Shadows, which, by the way, is out. The 20th anniversary edition is out. Let me not forget. And I know I described it in Awaken the Witch Within, and I know I described it in Wicca Made Easy. Simplest, it's so gorgeous. You go to your bookshelves, close your eyes, run your hand around the shelf, and when you feel this little tug, take the book off the shelf. Think of what your question might be, and you don't even have to have one. Let the book open and see where your eye falls and read it. As you begin to do this, if you do this every day, you realize that the divine is speaking to you. And the divine will speak to you with whatever is available to it. Clayton's divination tools, books, synchronicities, dreams. And as soon as you start to realize who is speaking with you, you begin to realize that the universe is conscious, it's alive, it's aware of you, it cares about you, it's paying attention to you. And that is one of the most extraordinary first steps that you can take into living in a magical way, in a magical world. You start to see that the divine is everywhere present. It's aware of you. It cares about you. It's concerned about you. It's compassionate. It has your best interests at heart. And if you engage with it, it will engage with you. And I think that's an incredible first step. What do you think about the sense of mystery and childlike imagination in terms of magic and witchcraft? What place do they hold? Huge. This is, I mean, I could talk about it all night. So I'll just share one personal story. I'm sure the person who sent this question, I don't have your name here and I apologize. We can have I'd love to have this, back and forth conversation. When I was a little girl, my mother, who worked and who, got home at 5:30 every night, she had certain rituals, right? So she could be very present with me. So she'd call me at noon when I came home for lunch from school, and she'd call me at 3 o'clock when I came home from school, or before I went out to play. And she would read to me before bed every night. That was one of our rituals in which she expressed her love for me, and her, she didn't have a quantity of time, but she made sure that we had a quality of time. And I know that the books that she read to me certainly contributed to my sense of mystery and magic and wonder that carried forward into my life, and is one reason that I became a witch. My favorite book, or one of them, was The Wizard of Oz. Right? And she would get to the end of the book, and I would make her start all over again. Right? And it drove her mad, but we'd finish the book, and I'd start over. Well, years and years later, of course, I understood, because the Wizard of Oz proceeds around the circle, which most people don't realize. They think of the Wicked Witch, they think of the flying monkeys, yes, the Scarecrow, yes, but in fact, she's going around the circle. She's going from east to south, west, north, and back again. And so when she finished, I wanted the circle again, and right, the spiral. The yellow brick road is the spiral. And the most important message of all, right, which I think I put up on Instagram the other day, that you've had the power with you all along, right? She gets to the end, and she's told to click her heels 3 times, because she's had the power with her all along, right? The point of the journey was to bring her to a realization that she's had the power within her all along. To me, Dorothy is the real witch. She's the real witch in The Wizard of Oz. And the other lesson, of course, was that there's no place like home. The Scarecrow and the Tin Man and the Cowardly Lion are, in fact, the spirit side of the 3 farmhands who love her and protect her and are there for her. And for me, although I spent 20 years spending lots and lots of time traveling into realms of spirit to make magic and experience the magic of realms of spirit, the last 20 years have been, I think, even more profound magic, to come back into this world and to see this world as the embodiment of the divine, to see that spirit and world are one. And that's where the real magic is, that this is the embodiment of the divine, and that they're not separate, they're one. And when you see that, the world is infused with magic. I think children know that because they haven't been taught yet to put the blindfold on and to separate spirit and world. Okay? And so I think that is the innate natural condition, and children who have not yet been conditioned to lose sight of it, right? To put their focus elsewhere into making money and conforming and there's the blindfold hasn't been tied on, and so they know the world is alive. They know the trees are talking to them. They can still hear them. I remember my happiest place was in the roots of trees or the branches of trees. They were alive. I knew they were alive. We all know that when we're children. And I think that a lot of the work that we do now is to decondition ourselves, to return to that early state of sensitivity and openness and relationship and oneness that children have, right? Are these great questions? I hope my answers are doing them justice. I just love them. And I had a flood, a couple of them, in the basement of the house that I sold last year because it was on the water and it flooded a few times. And I lost some things that were so precious to me. But among the things that I managed to save were a plastic container full of my childhood books, including that early copy of The Wizard of Oz that my mother read to me. The Alice in Wonderland kind of suffered, but I have them here. They're in my library, and they are so precious to me because they hold the magic of my childhood. And if I move, I can't. That's my file cabinet, but I still have my my Barbie dolls. They're here in my office. I haven't opened them up, but I have Barbie's dream house and her fashion and her theater, all these things, because they were so alive to me. They were full of magic, and they still hold that early awareness for me. I consider myself very lucky that I have all those things. So yeah, the sense of mystery and childlike imagination in terms of magic and witchcraft. What place do they hold? They hold the memory of who we were before we were taught not to see. Sure. What about the participation of transgender and pansexuals in Wicca? Is there a place for them? Are they welcome? Deborah Fox. I don't know, Deborah, whether you're here. This is like a huge conversation and incredibly important. So I'm not going to be able to do it full justice in the time that we have, but I want to touch on it at least a little bit, right? So the first answer is yes, definitely, absolutely. The first couple for whom I performed a hand fasting were my priestesses who were gay. All right, they weren't transgender, but 40 years ago, the issue was less about transgender and pansexuality. It was about just being gay. So initially, there, in traditional British witchcraft, there was some, hostility to the participation of folks who were gay, which is partly how Eddie Basinski came to start the Minoan Brotherhood, and my priestesses helped create, and I with them as the first mother coven, the Minoan Sisterhood. So to have a place where people who are gay could come and know that they were welcome. Interestingly, there weren't enough gay women in New York 40 years ago, so they had to let in a bunch of straight women. Hello. But half our coven was gay and half was straight. So from the very beginning, I was in a tradition that was revolutionary in that regard, and began to open a place for people who are gay in witchcraft. Now, 40 years later, our evolution has opened the community to people who are transgender and pansexual? And the answer is yes, of course. I mean, you could go back to shamanism and the earliest expressions of and tribal cultures that always understood that we are infinitely richer and more complex and more fascinating than just the traditional um, uh, heteronormative. Well, all that language now. This is okay. Heteronormative male female. And heavens knows, being in a women's group, one of the most important gifts that it gave me was the opportunity, because it was late 70s, early 80s, and the ideas about women were still appalling, absolutely appalling. I mean, 5% of lawyers were women. I was treated like an idiot child when I first was admitted to the bar. So the opportunity to be in an all women's circle was, for me, an extraordinary opportunity to explore the full range of polarity within my own gender, within being a woman. And I discovered, and Wicca was incredibly important for this, and women's mysteries was incredibly important for this, to be able to discover that I could be a warrior, that I could be a mother, that I could have all of those qualities within me, or a range of those, right? And so for women to have the divine feminine, which, I mean, Mary is not divine. In Catholicism, there was no goddess, and the Shekinah was hidden. In Judaism, you had to be a 40-year-old married man to practice the Kabbalah to begin, right? So the steps that have been taken by Wicca as it's matured and developed, and the gifts that it's given us, and being able to explore the richness of who we are beyond these the limitations of what has been a patriarchal culture for 5,000 years. It's one of the great gifts of Wicca, and Wicca is a living tradition that grows and matures and becomes wiser and more open-hearted. And the answer is, of course, there is a place for transgenders and pansexuals. Now, the question about women's mysteries and men's mysteries, and whether transgender women should participate in women's mysteries and transgender men should participate in men's mysteries, has become a very heated subject that I don't think is being managed with the right spirit and the right energy. And I think it's because of fear. I think it's because of woundedness. I think it's because of defensiveness. And it's tragic, really, that there are antagonisms within a community that should, in fact, be patient, be compassionate, be tolerant, and not just of heterosexuals towards transgenders, but of transgender folks being tolerant and compassionate towards women, towards men. There's room for everybody. And each path, for me, when I look at this, each path has its own mysteries. The journey of a transgender woman is different from my journey. I wouldn't presume to know what it is. I think it needs to be explored fully, deeply, in a space that is respected and esteemed by those who are not transgender, accepted. Those mysteries need to be explored by the person, the people, the community that's going through it. And I know it's kind of a cliche to talk about, is it Venn diagrams? But that's how I see it, that we're like this gorgeous sort of circle composed of circles. Native Americans talk about this. So you have the vesica piscis, right? You have the overlap between the circles, the almond, right? Which is this feminine space. And it's the shared space, it's the shared experience, it's the shared divinity, it's the shared embodiment of experience that binds us together. And then you have the unique experience, the rest of the space, the circle, that is unique to the individual, to the community of which they are a constituent part, their mysteries, their wisdom, their way, their path, that brings its gifts to the broader circle, not just the overlap, but what makes it unique and distinctive. And by creating this circle of interlinking circles, we become incredibly strong. So we have to seek the things that we have in common and treasure and revere, and sort of stand in awe of the things that are unique and different because they are unique and different. And that's diversity. And nature teaches us, right, that you don't have a healthy community without diversity. A healthy forest is not composed of all one tree or all one plant. It would die. You have to have this range of being in order for it to grow and mature and be healthy. So I want that difference. I want those differences. I think they're good. They don't freak me out. I think they're great. And I think that each each mystery then can develop its traditions. And then we develop these traditions of overlap that make us one community. And I think that there are all these magnificent, I should find one. I think that would become the illustration of sacred geometry, right? Where you get these fabulous concentric circles of these very gorgeous structures that have incredible resilience and strength. And that's kind of how I visualize it. That's how I see it. That we are each unique with points of commonality, and that the way that we deal with what's different is with respect, tolerance, interest, fascination, openness, acceptance, love, and that we seek the things that we have in common and honor the things that are different. That's how I would approach it. And I think that if we did that, we would be speaking with one another in more generous and more loving ways. And I think that's essential because there are those who don't feel that way, who in fact hold the levers of power right now. And those are the people with whom we need to be battling, not one another. We have, a Supreme Court, which right now is not sympathetic to women or to gay folks or to transgender or pansexual. So we have some real battles, and we shouldn't be fighting with one another. We should be working together. So I hope that answers your question, Deborah. Despite practicing for years, some folks do not have formal training, degrees of initiation. How important are they? How do you get them? Great question. Okay, so also a complex question, and worthy of more time than we have tonight, but I'll take a few minutes. So our blessing is our curse. We don't have a central hierarchy. We don't have a seminary. Well, there is Cherry Hill Seminary, but traditions have developed over the years and have their own ways of bringing people in, of training them, of perhaps initiating them, of providing measurements of progress, of development, and that can be a very good thing. The fact of the matter is, we don't have a quality control system, right? So anybody can read a book and say that they're a witch, and say that they're a high priestess, and say that they have a tradition. We didn't create the tradition of Ara. I mean, I created it after 20 years, and after the folks that I have been working with had gone out and started covens, who had started covens, and people said, we have a very distinct, unique way of working that nobody else has, because at the time, we were the first tradition and the only tradition working with core shamanism. We were a tradition. We had a unique way of working, and we'd been around for 20 years. And so it was appropriate to become a tradition. And we have, within the tradition of Ara, we have not a first, second, and third degree, but we have a training program. We have an initiation, and we have a training program for clergy so people can become priests and priestesses. We view them as teachers. But as the movement has grown, I think there's a tremendous need for teachers. And I think that you don't have to necessarily be initiated, and you don't have to be clergy in order to be skilled, to be proficient, and to be good, to be a good witch, to be a good teacher. I think, there are those who come to this quickly and easily and come for the right reasons, and you can tell right away, you know. And then there are those who come for power, or come because they're wounded, or come because they want to be important, because they want to boss people around, and you can kind of tell that right away as well. So the difficulty of our lack of hierarchy, eh, our blessing is our curse. No hierarchy, no centralized authority. You don't have to be initiated. You don't have to be part of a tradition where you've trained for 3 years. You can be self-taught. You can start your own coven. You can start your own group. All of those things are wonderful, and at the same time, um, the dark side, the shadow side, is that anybody can do it, and they may not be qualified, and they may not be coming for the right reasons, and they may not be ethical. And so people have to be very careful when they look for other folks to work with. And they have to exercise good judgment. They need to know what if somebody's starting a circle, what is their background? Do they have training? If they're holding themselves out as a priest or a priestess, how did they come to that title? I take that title very seriously. I think that it's a tremendous responsibility. Yeah? If you're going to call yourself a priest or a priestess, you should be trained. It's a title of great honor and responsibility. And personally, I think that it accompanies a tradition. I know that there'll be people who disagree with me, but while people have great talent and capacities, they also need skills, right? Traditionally, a shaman would take an apprentice and train the apprentice. Just like you need to learn how to journey, you need to learn how to work in a circle. There is a skill set that you need to develop, but it's not just the how to. You need to understand the why to behind it. Now there's more books than ever, and people online, and somebody will read something and then come online and put on their makeup, and their Instagram following will follow them, and they've read a book, not necessarily a good book. And so there's a lot of that out there. I also happen to think that that there are ways of sort of identifying the value of somebody who presents themselves as a teacher, their background, how long they've been practicing. You can tell pretty quickly whether someone is wise, whether somebody is open-hearted, good-hearted. I don't think it's necessary for people to have formal training to be a witch or to practice witchcraft. I don't think that I also don't think that being a witch means that you don't need any training, that you could just read a book and call yourself a witch. Witch to me means wise one. Witch comes from witcha. It's a 5,500-year-old word, and it meant a wise one. It was a shaman. That's somebody who has been wounded, who has learned how to heal, and who knows how to work with spirit, who's able to see the sacred in the world, and can provide a role for their community. I think that takes time. So especially if you are self-taught, modesty, humility, hard work, time will shape you. If formal training does it, then it requires time, because pure instinct is not enough. It's a skill-based tradition. How you develop those skills, courses, working with somebody who has them, reading, practicing, working with those who have skills and ethics and experience is important. So it's not that the degrees are important, and it's not that the title is important. Those are indications, right, of capacities, of sense of responsibility, of ethics and wisdom those things are reflections of maturity. They take time to cultivate. So I think anybody can practice, and they don't have to be initiated, and they don't have to be trained, but they do have to be skillful. And if they don't have the benefit of formal training, then they need the benefit of time. And everybody needs a teacher. So the question is, who is the teacher? In shamanism, I learned very quickly that the drum was the teacher and my power animal was the teacher, that the technique was the means by which I learned. And it's a very powerful technique. It's one reason that I urge people to practice shamanically. The drum becomes your teacher, and the spirits, the guides, become your teacher, and they're good teachers. The other teacher is Mother Earth. And that's one reason I'm constantly urging people to go outside and spend time in nature and work in nature as much as possible. Which takes me back to one of the early questions about how do you get started? I failed to mention one of the best places to get started is with your own body, is to pay attention if you're a woman, and to pay attention to the cycles of the moon and the cycles of your own body. If you're a man, to pay attention to the cycles of the seasons and to pay attention to the wisdom of your own body. So I've got one more question, but it's 9 o'clock. So I'm going to fold up shop. I'm going to close out office hours, and thank you all for being with me tonight. Thanks for the great questions. And we are going to be meeting again in a month. I'm not sure that we're going to meet on, not sure what the third Thursday. I apologize. I don't have my calendar in front of me. What the third Thursday is. I don't know if it's the 21st. But we'll be in touch with you. We'll let you know. Check the Facebook page, and we'll be sending out emails. If you're not on the e-list, go phylliscurot.com and sign up. And I thank you all for being with me. It's just been lovely. I'm going to read your comments later. So I send you all great love and great blessings. May this lunar cycle be full of dreams. And when next we meet, we will be ready to start to see those dreams begin to come to life for the first time. So love and blessings to you all, to Italy, to Michigan, to Vancouver, to Holland, to Australia, Florida, everywhere. Suzanne and Pat and Chris and Twyla and everybody who's been here, Paula, everybody. Yeah, I am really grateful to all of you, and I hope you had a good time tonight being in sacred space with me. Love you all. Blessings. Bye.